welcome to the dorms. If you were really paying attention to the opening cinematic, you might have noticed that the route that Cooper took while holding our phone was literally just walking the whole way from our room in the dorms, through this reception, through the atrium, and through security, into the brig, and we've just walked it all in reverse. Anyway, there's one particularly unthreatening guard in here, and a whole lot of intel. So, let's just get reading.
I wonder what this mystery room with no camera feed could be. A Zager safe room, perhaps?
I can think of worse ways to get players to pay attention to these little lore items than scattering little hints in them. It's a solid technique and I endorse it.
Prizrak, I just received an alarming message that 933W was seen leaving the library wearing one of our uniforms. He may be heading back your way to find that girl he's been crushing on. Notify me immediately if the actions of any of our agents seem in the least bit suspicious to you.
If you have any faith at all in plot contrivances, you probably already know who this girl that he's been crushing on is.
Zager's secret compound discovered. Inside the rat hole, sources say pornography, drugs everywhere. Zager almost certainly had other hiding spots. Even Derringer suggested as much to me the other night in a, interview? I'm not printing this, of course. Makes him look bad. Makes them all look bad. You can't be perceived as having cracked security when a crackpot is living in your walls rent-free.
So far in this totalitarian state, public enemy number 1 has literally been living in the air vents undetected, and a teenager has stolen a security uniform and just wandered out of confinement. These guys are definitely, absolutely, really good at their jobs.
Settle down, children, settle down. I am as anxious as you are to acquaint myself with Miss Prideaux. She is a most welcome addition to our République. And to that end, I would like to present her and all of you with this small gift, a symbol of longevity and the relationships we look forward to watching take root.
Thank you so much, Headmaster. As one who will be so singularly focused on the well-being of these young, bright minds, I am truly humbled. I cannot express how sincerely I am looking forward to getting to know each and every one of you.
It's difficult to get a particularly good read on Marie. We know that she's defied security for the sake of the children, but she's not exactly been gentle in her treatment of Hope from what we've seen so far. Anyway, we could just continue into the dorms at this point, but that would be forgetting that we are on bound to thoroughly pickpocket every guard, and also to investigate the nearby confinement room, which probably has at least one useless piece of loot in it.
Check his pockets. Nice.
Another perfect crime. Anyway, let's go check out... oh, hell.
Engaging the subject.
Well, I guess it's time to show off how self-defense works. It's not particularly complicated. It's basically automatic. Anyway, this guy's just gonna stand here, being all agonized, for at least 30 seconds. So he's basically out of our concern. We can do everything we need to in here, and then just walk right back past him. That might sound impressive, but there really isn't actually a whole lot that we need to do in here, or at least that takes place in real time anyway. There is this poster.
There are many alcoves within Metamorphosis. Each one, a perfect fit for a precal who wishes to remain unseen.
Stealth games, right? Anyway, that poster's a bit of an asshole. You can literally only see it from the camera inside the confinement cell, which is not a camera that you'd really have any particular need to ever access in the ordinary progression of things. There's also this locker which is probably going to contain...
P0 here.
Yep. And just like that, we're basically neutral on this room. Sorry about all that, Mr. Geller. I assure you it was very slightly worth it. Here we can get a sense of exactly how far our vision range extends away from Hope when we're in the cameras. It's maybe not as far as you'd think, but it's enough. Anyway, there's one last little alcove in here to check out. We can't get in here physically, but there's stuff. There's plenty of stuff. There's always plenty of stuff in this game.
The girl should be extra careful going forward. Looks like Mireille knows she has escaped from the brig.
I mean, it's a surveillance state. Did we think we were the only ones watching through these cameras?
What? What is this? Mon Dieu. Banning the children's access to such fundamental literature was not enough. Now he believes these books have been smuggled into the domes. Please let the headmaster know that I shall investigate this, despite his suspicions being not only unwarranted, but mildly insulting.
Madame, do you really want me to tell him that?
All but the last part.
While it looks like Mireille being mildly sympathetic does not exclude her from villain incompetence syndrome.
Zager's poisoned manifestos. More fuel for the fire.
It seems as though Zager's preferred method of insurrection is taking the abundant copies of the Headmaster's manifesto and, like, scribbling on them, I guess? It doesn't seem like that would be particularly efficient, but it's definitely got everybody scared, so maybe I'm not so smart.
Mireille's liberal arts education is of little benefit in this crushing environment. I wonder if she would even recognize her former, idealistic self.
These comments from Cooper aren't the vicious dunk on liberal arts degrees that it might be tempting to read them as. If anything, they're an acknowledgement of the value of the perspective they offer, and a lamentation of their loss. Anyway, we're not quite done with this little nook. We definitely can't get beyond that door, not least because we can't even get to it. But in the grand tradition, there are cameras we can hack, and so we can get our look at Mireille's room, and, that ain't right. I think this is a glitch. I'm not really sure though. That aside though, there's still plenty of interest in here.
Something in those pages has Mireille quite upset. Zager's words sting like tear gas in the eyes of the establishment.
I mean, can you blame her? Really?
Pages from the mini-manifesto. Looks like they've been ripped out. Mireille would be wise to dispose of these more discreetly.
More hints that we're not the only contaminated party here. I wonder how Mireille feels about the establishment beyond just Derringer.
A cell phone charger. Worthless without the phone, but no less dangerous as contraband.
That looks like an Apple 30-pin adapter. The iPhone 4S was, all at once, the latest iPhone available when République started development, the earliest iPhone the game will run on, and the last iPhone to use the 30-pin adapter before it was replaced with the Lightning port. As you can see, there's a cassette tape in here, so obviously we're going to have to come back later, somehow, once we're able to get past both that level 1 locked door and the voice print door. Anyway, the dorms. It's not a complicated place, it's just one corridor with a couple of offshoot rooms. The first of which is...
This is the girl's room. 390H. Of course, this isn't what she calls herself.
It isn't exactly subtle, but I guess this is one of the game's first blatant acknowledgements that 390H, when read in reverse, is Hope. I wonder if any other pre-cals have given themselves clever names that are literally just their designations backwards. Someone we may have heard of recently. Anyway, Hope's room is pretty much unchanged from the start of the game. Cooper's bottle of sovereign water is gone, and it's been replaced with a banned book. The useless camera in the speaker is still there, but otherwise, It's all just intel.
I'll hold on to this.
If you're wondering why we couldn't scan all this stuff at the start of the game, then, well, don't.
Hey, Fishy, you hungry? Here you go. What does the world look like to you? Fishy, I'll tell you a secret. I like a boy who lives on the other hall. The one we call Weep. He sits beside me in history class, and he's adorable. I'm too shy to talk to him.
Well, teenager's gonna teenager, I guess. Anyway, I wonder if this guy is someone we've heard of before. Perhaps someone we know to have absconded, and someone who we know to have been crushing on a girl.
Pyramid flags flutter in the wind. His voice carries above them, singing a promise to lead these men to honor, protect, and love them. From his garden perch, he keeps us secure against the forces of evil. He spares our minds the hollow allure and fraud of Zager's upheaval. The République stands and will for all time, safe from ruin or disaster, because he is watching out for us all, our noble and wise headmaster.
Well, that's incredibly creepy. But, you know, despite all of that, I've really got to give Hope props for her grasp on meter. I think too many video games that decide to include poetry also forget to make that poetry not, like, suck. Looking directly at you, child of light.
390H, my dear, my inspiring pupil. I know you're not accustomed to gifts, but this is more than just some trinket. It is a secret between you and I, and it cannot be shared until we are both ready. So I will keep the key for safekeeping until the two of us agree to open it together. Until then, I hope you will treasure its beauty as much as I do you. And when you gaze upon it, I hope your thoughts will be of me.
And now I just feel like I need to take a shower. Hope's room does a pretty good job driving home one of this game's strongest recurring ideas, that we are an interloper in this ridiculous place. There's been stuff going on here for far longer than we've been watching, and for the most part, we're just going to have to be okay with not being a direct party to much of it. Honestly, I kinda like that about this game. I think too many games fall into the trap of trying to show you too much stuff, and it just ends up being overwhelming. Anyway, here's a bathroom. There's a guard here, but he's just going to stand there and stare at that butterfly for literally all of eternity. So it's really pretty trivial to walk up and pickpocket him and get out. Also, I recognise this guy. République's weird little trick with having mugshots of Kickstarter backers in the game is one thing. Honestly, I kinda like that. It lends a certain verisimilitude, and even informs the flavour of the game world a little bit, but there's that. And then there's pulling up a guard's passport and seeing the face of a main character of Penny Arcade.
I'll hold on to this.
Those are different things. Anyway, there was also a banned book in here, and Hope just picks it up while walking past, which is pretty cool, and I like that too. There's not much more to this room, but there is one important thing to note before we leave. And that's this very conspicuous vent. You may recall we read an email talking about a space between the men and women's restrooms. Well, that seems to be a pretty good bet. Unfortunately, there's no way for us to open vents right now, so we're just gonna have to leave it. It bears mentioning that Hope can pathfind her way from pretty much anywhere she can be to anywhere you can see with a camera from range of anywhere she can be. So as long as there's no particular risk of being seen by a guard, it's usually a pretty good idea to just range ahead as far as you can and click, and wait for Hope to catch up. If anything, it saves some frustration. You'd think this guard wouldn't be too much of a problem to sneak past, and you'd be right. Unfortunately, he patrols right into a room with another book that we need, so we're going to have to get that the hard way. Don't worry though, it seems like it could be frustrating, and it could be, but it's actually pretty straightforward.
Look what your arrogance has wrought. You are destroying the things that make your life meaningful. You are doing this to yourself. And unless you tell me where you have hidden that manifesto, I will accelerate that which you have already chosen to inflict upon yourself. Prizrak, take this precal to confinement.
Murray talks a pretty good talk, as ever. But really though, if she thought that she could have this much control over angry teenagers, then maybe it's her, and not 310M, or should I say Mole, who should be considering what their arrogance has wrought. Alright, time to raid this room. You're probably thinking that this is going to be a stealth game patrol trap, in which we have to get in, and then hide, and then get out in 2 separate cycles.
Check his pockets.
But honestly though, it's easy to forget sometimes that the people who made this game do actually know what they're doing, and it turns out that it's actually just about possible to do everything we need in a single cycle. You just have to be bold and fearless and remember that this game is never particularly punishing, ever. So really, just go for it. It'll probably all work out fine. See? And even if it does go wrong and you do get caught, the penalty for failure is basically 0. I might show it off if it happens during a recorded run, but there's a very real possibility that I'm just going to have to tell you and you're going to have to take my word for it. Anyway, before we move on, let's check out our ever-expanding stash of contraband. It's going to be a while before we can listen to these tapes, but we can at least see their titles, so that's something, I guess.
I would pronounce the team behind this freaky little game, but text-to-speech has a hard time with the word Simogo. These guys did some light-hearted games before making Year Walk. When I played this game, it really frightened me. How do you go from such happiness like Bumpy Road to a psychological head trip like this one is beyond me. I hope these guys didn't fry their brains.
I haven't played Year Walk, but I did play Device 6, Simogo's next game, which rather ingeniously lent into the mobile format to get across the points that it wanted to make. Honestly, it's one of the most impressive mobile games I've ever played.
A modern game with all the trappings of a great 90s arcade cabinet, mutants, post-apocalyptic environments, killer co-op. I like to imagine nuclear throne machines lining every laundromat and corner store, disaffected youths pushing grannies out of the way, placing quarters to claim their spot in line. The developers at Lambier are the true wasteland kings.
I haven't played Nuclear Throne, but I have played one of Lambier's previous games, Ridiculous Fishing, a game which rather ingeniously lent into the mobile format to... hang on, wait a minute. Well, anyway, Ridiculous Fishing was a really, really good game.
They call Super Hexagon a Twitch game. I doubt even Doc Holliday had quick enough reflexes for this one. I've never gotten farther than 3.5 seconds. It's intense. I don't know if that's because it gives me vertigo, or because of the ominous lady shouting game over every time I die.
I actually have played Super Hexagon, and basically, yeah, extremely same.
There are few things, Librarian, as disappointing as failed leadership, especially when that leadership fails by giving in to mental illness or desire. Hawthorne came from a line of leaders, but you wouldn't know that by reading his account of Dimsdale. The Scarlet Letter would teach our citizens that its leadership can succumb to the weaknesses that we work daily to cure. Such doubt is unacceptable. Where would we be without faith in government?
I appreciate that République never feels the need to call out the self-evident absurdity of the headmaster's comments on these things. Admittedly, in 2013 this would have been a matter of moderate faith in the reader. By the time the final episode was released in 2016, I don't think anybody would need to be told where we'd be without faith in government.
Japan had the sense to try and then fine a translator for dragging this garbage into Japanese. Out there beyond our walls, Lady Chatterley's lover has a reputation as sidekick to hormones in adolescent awakenings. Puberty is a delicate time. We need to cultivate it as a plant in a garden. We cannot teach them control with this floating around. I assure you, we know better than Lawrence.
No such luck in Britain and America, though. The obscenity trials arising from the publication of this book are widely considered to be turning points against censorship all over the world. I think it's also possible that the book's thoughts on class, industrialization, and the nature of love might have been even more of a concern to the headmaster than, well, the more famous parts.
This hiding place looks good. I hope they can't see me here.
It's not just lockers and alcoves, pot plants also make astonishingly good hiding places. Anyway, it's very easy to miss, but there's a confinement room off of this checkpoint. It's a pretty good idea to check out. It's got a surprisingly useful thing in it. You'll most likely only see it by jumping to this camera and panning back towards Hope. It's not the most obnoxiously hidden room in the game, but it's a tiny bit annoying. Also, I may have lied about the useful thing actually being in the confinement room. There's nothing in there other than a random locker and a charger. But right outside it is this locked box, which we're going to get to just as soon as we find a way to deal with Mr. Grant here. As usual, he's got a video game on him, and he walks a slightly irritating patrol route that we're going to have to use just a tiny bit of trickery to deal with. And yes, he has mail.
I would add stolen cell phones to that list.
In other words, we're not going to be able to beat the metal detectors by discarding certain items from our inventories. Well, there is one way, but we'll get to that.
Hey, I'm arranging one of the tech crews to run a full diagnostic of the metal detectors in the facility. But I want you to oversee the work on your station personally. There are too many potential hiccups that could be had in the commissary. And with the arrival approaching so quickly, I'm looking to you to shore up the weakest link. If you need any additional resources, you let me know.
This isn't the first time we've heard about the arrival and how important everybody seems to think it is. It also won't be the last time that we don't know anything about it. Anyway, the metal detectors do have a critical vulnerability, the off switch. Hack that, and we can just walk right through it. We won't though, because we've still got business in this lobby. This would have been a really good time to pickpocket that guy, wouldn't it? Oh well. Instead, let's see what we have here.
You have just found a new battery for the girl's phone. Some OmniView abilities require battery power, and will not work when the girl's phone is not well charged. You will probably find more batteries lying around this facility. You may also recharge the phone at a demon server or inside confinement rooms.
So these things are basically our potions.
I'll hold on to this.
They're consumable, they're everywhere, they refill a couple points of the thing we need. There's not really a whole lot to them, other than maybe wondering how it is they're able to interface with a phone over a USB-A connector. I'm probably overthinking this. Anyway, we don't need to use that to charge up right now.
Good idea. My battery was getting low.
Alright, let's try and actually remember to pickpocket the guy this time. You're probably thinking, but I've forgotten. And, well, to be completely honest, you're totally right. I mean, almost. I almost forgot. It's really very embarrassing. But hey, almost forgetting
I'll check his pockets.
is very different from actually forgetting. And now let's take advantage of his complete lack of peripheral vision to get the hell out of here. Okay, game appreciation break.
When I play Kentucky Route Zero, I'm transported to my childhood. I can smell the coffee-stained computer in my father's home office. Conway's surrealistic point-and-click adventure is something best experienced on a quiet Sunday morning. As the sunlight pours into the room, I wonder when the developers at Cardboard Computer will release the next episode. I don't mind waiting though. Every new episode is a gift.
That particular comment would have been recorded at some point for release in February 2015, the PC release of République. You might have thought it would have been a little bit presumptuous
No sign of the girl.
for it to have made these comments then about Kentucky Route Zero, but in the end, this 5-episode game managed to just about beat that 5-episode game to completion in the market. So maybe it turned out to be not such a bad idea after all. I guess it bears emphasizing that yes, the PC, PS4, iOS and Android versions of République do all have slightly different collections of games available, mostly on account of exclusivity.
Get your grubby mitts off me!
I can't see!
The mobile versions, perhaps unsurprisingly, tended to focus on other successful mobile games, while the PC version tends to have a little bias towards Kickstarter success stories. They're not completely one note though, and I've got to say, in the end, my opinion of Cooper's taste in video games is quite high. Now, doesn't it seem like I've forgotten something? Here's it dawning on me. I'm clever, I swear. Anyway, let's go back and fix that. Naturally, we emerge back into the dining area exactly as the pepper spray wears off.
She's definitely here.
So that's annoying.
Increase the threat level.
République does have various levels of guard alertness, and you can see signs throughout the game that tell you what the current threat level is. They're not particularly complicated. I'm honestly not sure what half of them even do. But broadly, guards will become more alert as they become more aware of you, and that will wear off over time. Anyway, I'm clever.
Going in for the steal. I got something.
Another perfect crime. Well, we've just burned through a lot of pepper spray for no particularly good reason, so it's a good thing there's a confinement room just off the kitchen. We can probably get a little top up. No? Well, whatever. Instead, let's get hells of rich.
Welcome to my domain.
Beautiful.
See anything you like. Monitor prisoner patrol routes.
Predict is great. You could just watch guards to figure out their patrols, but this is better. Do this instead.
Come back anytime.
No, I did not notice that locker in the foreground. But like I said, ultimately it's not going to matter very much. Let's use our new toy on this guy. As you can see, he has a very straightforward patrol route and he's not going to be very much of a problem. Well, there's one way in which he's going to be a tiny bit of a problem, but we'll get to that in just a second. There's some risks to this room, but fuck it. Let's just go right for it.
Nice. I'll hold on to this.
And as luck would have it, his weird patrol takes him right past another book for us to grab. Anyway,
Level is back to normal.
there are 2 guards in here. This might be a slight problem if they had more problematic patrols, but nah, it's all good. This guy doesn't even have a patrol route, he just stands in that spot. and alternates between looking at the big obvious exit from the room and looking at the wall, which suits us just fine, really. We probably could have made a run for it right then, but as it is, I forgot to be bold, so we're just going to have to wait for everyone's patrols to line up nicely again, wait for him to turn around and look at the door, and then... Now, as for how we're going to make our getaway from this, there's a completely unblocked vent that we can crawl through. And it leads to the other side of the wall. You have gotta love stealth game designs. Now, let's see what we got.
Tower defense games are a dime a dozen these days, but Kingdom Rush is the real deal. I wish I could tell you why, but I'm not a game designer. Well, I made a game one time, a game about a handsome, quiet guard who escapes from his horrible job. I call it Rogue Cooper.
In the PS4 version, instead of Kingdom Rush, we got Gravity Rush, aka the game with the funnest way of getting from point A to point B since Portal.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention use this game as an educational simulator to show how diseases are spread. Pretty funny, considering the object of the game is to kill everyone in the entire world. That, and you can give your disease funny names like Toxic Doo-Doo Syndrome.
I was sure that Plague Inc. was made by the same people who made Pandemic of Shut Down Everything fame, but it turns out it isn't.
Alexander Bruce describes his game as a mind-bending psychological exploration game, which sounds a lot more fun than the definitive test of whether you are smart or not. But that's why I like Anti-Chamber. It treats you like a functional human being, which also means you feel like an abject failure whenever you get stumped, like that one time I couldn't figure out how to exit the game.
Having you spend 95% of your time feeling like a complete moron is something common to all the best puzzle games, and also the profession of software development.
Can you believe that many regard Whitman, the iconic poet of the American Republic? That alone says enough. This verbal monument to sensuality and excess, you know that no library except Philadelphia would touch it after publication. Reading it is like watching the man stroll naked through the streets. I, too, sing the body electric, though perhaps more forcefully than even Whitman could enjoy.
He seems to have no stronger criticism of Whitman than him having expressed something, and he sees nothing wrong with that.
The body is strange, librarian. Oxytocin and endorphins lead so many to mistake robotic chemical responses for emotional attachments. Worse, though, is what Burroughs promotes. He suggests deviant behavior as a mechanical way around the trappings of societal control. We cannot let people think their bodies are ways around the state. They must exercise the République with their bodies in everything they do. Everything. Throw naked lunch in the pile.
Lord knows we can't have people thinking their bodies aren't the property of the state. Madness. And this is pretty much it. Through that door is one more room, and right past there is our eventual destination. The only thing we still need to check out is the one confinement room just off of this room. But there's no guards or any other threats here, so we can just stroll right on in. Do remember that vent though. It's going to be slightly important.
Clear.
Good idea. We can recharge here.
One of this game's slightly weirder missteps is that it adjusts the volume of Prizrak's report shouts solely on the basis of proximity to you, rather than, you know, whether or not there's any enormous thick walls between you and them. So that can be a little bit unnerving if you're not prepared for it.
The door. Murray.
I gave you a stay of execution, and this is how you repay me.
Murray is coming.
Well, those flickering embers of clemency have gone cold.
There must be another way out of here.
That file is dead, and so have we. So are you when I get down there.
There must be something you can do.
There absolutely is something we can do to help. After all, what pointlessly decorated locked room would be complete without a puzzle? Anytime you come across unique music and green-tinted icons in the hack view, it's a dead giveaway that it's time to exercise the thinking parts of your brain.
Before we can look to the future, we must look to the one who will lead us there.
Thank you, Cooper. If you have any experience at all solving puzzles in video games, you can probably imagine the entirety of how the rest of this room is going to play out right now.
The Overseer secures the bonds between us all. Only let him serve, and you will be served in return.
And there he is, folks. Or at least, there is most of his face. I don't really know what to say to that, honestly. Anyway, the walls of this room are adorned with portraits. The portraits are all facing either towards or away from the big picture of the Overseer. I wonder what the puzzle is. That's a joke, I don't wonder.
The monopolist unifies different industries under the banner of righteous service to promote the common good. The greedy industrialist owns and owns and owns. She stifles the research that would threaten her financial bottom line. The civil engineer takes what is true, regardless of source, and puts it to use for safety and comfort. The mad inventor covets his results and denies his peers data, always envious of Mother Nature's perfection. The lustful poet's vulgar winds blow down the walls of our house, exploding beauty into decadence. The state artist seeks only to educate her neighbors against the ordinary, exposing the beauty in truth.
Something we're going to come to appreciate about République is that it treats puzzles less as an opportunity to confuse the shit out of a player and more as an opportunity for some creative avenues of exposition.
The neighborly policeman gives the children time to settle down, maintaining law and order with rare discipline. The wrathful soldier's boots clamp across the street. Blood dries on his baton and soles. Wisely, the politician shows that serving the people is the path to sane obedience. The gluttonous baby kisser stuffs herself with ballots until she is purged from office and once more desperate to please. The slothful union man spends more time relaxing beneath the shade tree than sweating atop the scaffold. The working class heroes keep their heads down and their minds on the tasks that edify and advance the human race.
I'm not really sure what the canonical purpose of this mechanism is, and I'm also not really sure in what context the headmaster's thoughts on all these people were recorded. It seems like he's kind of dancing around the shadow of a point, possibly about broad professions or even about class, saying that it's down to an individual to decide to use what they have for good or ill. But honestly, I think thinking that about all this is giving the man a little bit too much credit than it's becoming apparent that he deserves. Anyway, now that I've managed to show off all that dialogue without accidentally finishing the puzzle, which I definitely did on the first take without any retries.
The neighborly... Wisely, the politician shows... The monopolist. The civil engineer takes what is true, regardless of source, and puts it to use for safety and comfort.
But really though, why is this here?
Let's get out of here before she shows up.
Why is this between the staff dining room and this weird little server room? Anyway, here's Murray at last. And hey, she's accompanied by one of our old friends from the atrium. I told you there'd be a tiny reason to remember those guys' names.
Yes, madame. Watch your step in there. She could be armed.
And now there's another one patrolling outside.
Come out, child. Make it easy on yourself.
Anyway, Murray's just gonna sit in here for the foreseeable future, wandering around and trying to sound threatening.
You know what I want.
So let's just leave her to that, and go and get what we came for. There are a couple of other things in here that could distract us, but mostly they're not worth the bother. We'll get to them all in good time. Our objective is right there. Well, okay then.
It's over. You're right in a cage.
Anyway, there is one last thing to distract ourselves with.
One of the great terrors of literature is its ability to touch a reader's unspoken experience. But you understand, librarian. A République requires peace between its citizens. Animal Farm gives voice to bigoted trends we must erase. Its laws separate citizens into different body types. Those with 2 legs, and 4 legs, and wings. It's a short jump from this fiction to realizing that you've never liked the color of your neighbor's skin. This one belongs in a cage.
Animal Farm makes you racist. That is a take worthy of Twitter. Anyway, there's a big inviting button here. Let's press it. Well, that sure was something. Our next objective will of course be to backtrack all the way to the atrium, and in the grand Metroidvania tradition, we will be taking a slightly different route.